I walked into the office of Gibson Pools to work with their company. I felt something that I'd never felt before when I walked in their doors. When I met Ed and his team, I clearly discovered what it was. It was culture. It was palpable. In our conversation, I heard statements like, I just fell in love with the pool business. Comfort has nothing to do with success. Leaders create leaders. Dreams don't come true. Plans come true. Ed Gibbs, the king of pools and the CEO of Gibson Pools and Landscape Creations, had an incredible conversation about family business and building a world-class culture. This was the podcast I was waiting for. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions. And get ready to take a deep dive on the My Better the Pond podcast with my special guest, Ed Gibbs. All right, Mr. Ed Gibbs, CEO, author, the king of pools, all around nice guy. And I think, Ed, this is going to be the premier podcast of 2025. Mr. Ed Gibbs of Gibson Pools and Landscape Creations. My friend, I am absolutely ecstatic to have you on the Better the Pond podcast, and I welcome you.
Well, thank you, Warren. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for even considering the little pool company that could from Ontario.
The
Thank you
little
very
pool company.
much.
Good. So I just want to give a little bit of a backstory of, why we're here. So,
Okay.
I had met your daughter Kaylee at a tech group that I was speaking at. So we'll give a little shout out to Lindsay McMurray because Lindsay's just a great guy. But I met your daughter Kaylee, and of course, since she had when I was speaking there, and she talked to you, and that started on sort of our journey together. And I came in and I did some work for Gibson and for your leadership team. And I have to say this right out of the gate, I have never in my career seen a culture that you and your team have created in an organization that was palpable when you walked in the building. So I just want to get that out of the way because you have created something absolutely spectacular. And in that situation, I was actually honored to come work with you and to be a part of that.
Thank you.
So hope we can unpack that a little bit. So
All right.
I'm just so happy that that I know when I got to meet you, we've had some great conversation and get to know who you are and a little more Gibson, and that's why I'd like to tell the world all about you and Kaylee and Connor and your dad and all the things you've done about Gibson Pools. So without further ado, shall we?
We shall.
Okay, so Ed Gibbs. Tell us a little bit about the little pool company that could. So tell us a little bit about Gibson.
Well, my dad worked in the pool business in the late 50s and 60s, and he then decided to go on his own. And he went with one of his partners at the time, it was Sinelli Pools, and then he went with one of the partners, Bob Sinelli, to create Gibson. Gibson is two families, the Gibbs family and the Sinelli family. And their mission was to build as many concrete pools as they possibly could build. And that birth was in 1972. And it really was, if you remember the Beverly Hillbillies, the cement pond, it was a time and an era that people in specifically North America could own a piece of luxury like a swimming pool. And it was really a wonderful time, but we were very small. I wouldn't say mom and pop, but pretty close to it. It was a very small company. And then I joined the organization not till 1980. And I did as a student. And I fell in love with the pool business. I would watch my dad make people happy. He was delivering dreams to people. And again, at that beginning in 70s and 80s, to have a piece of luxury, a piece of something so spectacular that you could bring your family. And I was part of that.
Hmm.
And that was so, so amazing. So as time moved forward through high school, through university, I looked at our company, and obviously in a micro scale, and I wanted to always make it bigger. When I look in the mirror, I see a lion, and other people look in the mirror and they may see a kitty cat, or they may see something docile. But I've always been extremely hungry for success and building a team. So I looked around to see the best there was in the pool business, in North America, and other businesses. And I looked at the successes of others, and the key ingredient to success was building a team.
Mm,
And when you look at Vince Lombardi as an example,
mhm,
he took Green Bay Packers. Think of that. It was a football team named after a meat packing plant and made them champions. How does someone do that? How does someone in adversity like that create tremendous opportunity for everyone? And that became really a life mission for me is how do I grow and become successful? Only with others. There's an old saying, I'm a self-made man. There's no such thing because you need a team and you need a support staff. Some cases it's your wife, some cases your wife and kids, some cases it's your wife, kids, and your family unit at work. And I refer to that clearly as a family unit at work because you have to live it. There's so many companies that have their core values up on the wall or posted on their website, and no one lives by it or understands it or even knows what the hell they even are.
mhm,
So it's about living the dream. It's about expressing it collaboratively. It's about working with the people that you have to put the oxygen mask on first. You have to train, educate, love them, and they will love your customers.
mhm.
And I think that symbiotic relationship is the coolest thing because I did it at my own hands with a team. My success is only because of obviously, my parents who started, my dad who started it, the family unit we had around at the time. And Peter Fries was a very big part of our success. Peter joined our team in 91, and he's an incredible part of our success and a partner, of course, at Gibson as well as time went on. And that collaborative approach to problem solving, conflict management, building the company, building a culture, doing right by the client all the time, those embody success and discipline. And that's who we are.
Well, as I've said before, and you heard me say it, is if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And it's an old
Absolutely.
African proverb, and it's one of the ones of my favorites. And I think you just sort of, just really encapsulated that whole concept because you said those, I'm a self-made man. Well, it doesn't exist. So
No.
I'm going to throw this out there, talk about Gibson. So right there is H2O, and said that Ed is an author, and I would highly suggest you actually look for this book. Ed gifted this to me, so this is very precious to me. But it really tells the story of Gibson, right? Almost from sort of a beginning,
Yeah.
not to, but the best part, it's not beginning to end.
Yeah.
It's beginning to now, and the end is yet to be written. So history is going to write itself. So anyway, this is Ed's book. I read it, loved it, and it got me really to not only I understood you from before or got to know you before, but this was a great adjunct to find out how did you get to where you are. So look up
Thank
Ed's
you.
book, Ed 2O, the king of pools. So
If I can just add to that, and thank you very much for mentioning that. That brought us up to 19, so it was just pre-COVID. And the next book I'm writing is the beginning of COVID to this next part of the journey. And it's interesting how the world has changed so dramatically since then. but COVID is one of the best things that's happened to our economy, in
Mhm.
my opinion, and to our business.
Mhm.
And I think I look, Warren, that through a lens of half full instead of half empty.
Mhm.
Of course, there were tragedies. Of course, people lost their lives and businesses. For sure, that happens. But that happens in the real world, and
Mhm.
we live in the real world. And I looked at it from how can I use this as an opportunity to protect, to serve, and to move our business forward in a dynamic way never seen before. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, I love it. And just to share that is this podcast started in COVID. And because I was hearing a lot of negativity, a lot of, everything that was going wrong, and I said, here's an opportunity to change the narrative, to talk to great people who are doing amazing things, right, in the world in a time of struggle, right, that they were really stepping up and stepping out and having that mindset. So
Yeah.
if it wasn't for that, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation now. So I love the fact that it's the glass half full and is looking at from situations from a standpoint of what's the opportunity in this versus playing the victim stance of what was me.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
fantastic. So Ed, I'd like to dive into who is Ed Gibbs. So here's the question: what got you from being a gosling? Now this is going back. This is where you were hatched. This is where you began life, right? So you were hatched one day. Your parents hatched you. So what got you from being a gosling? To leaving the nest. And leaving the nest is when did you go out on your own? And did you venture out on your own? Or did you get kicked out? Did you get kicked out of the nest? What happened? To, where you are today. So, Mr. Ed Gibbs, what's your backstory?
Well, that's an interesting question that has a very deep meaning to me because at the time I was in university and we were having a lot of struggles. The economy, life, all kinds of things were happening. I'm referring to the family business is what I'm referring to.
Mhm.
And I had to get in that business to really help my parents. I looked at them. I'm the youngest of seven. I loved my parents. I enjoyed them. But interestingly enough, I had different parents than my siblings did because my oldest brother is 74 and I'm 60. So there's a very big difference in age. And the first one gets hit with all the discipline. The last one gets hit with go play whatever, do whatever you want, just get out of here. And I was left alone a lot. And from my perspective, I had a relationship with my parents that was friendly. So I had a closer relationship. I was at home longest. And it was important for me to nurture and pay forward and pay back to my parents what they did for me. So I would say that out of the nest was just around high school and university and into the world of business that was very, and still is, very difficult. But through that adversity and through that fire and through that difficult times, emotional times, I learned how to grow in a different way. I'm looking at lawsuits and customer complaints and lack of money and family issues and employee issues and all kinds of other economic constraints that were on. And I had a little bit of what you said earlier of the victim and why me and poor me. But when I looked inside and I looked that I have the power to change, I have the intellect and I have the resources to change. So shut up, put up, and move on. And I think often, if you don't kick yourself in the rear end and have self motivation, then look to others for support. That's not a bad thing. But for God's sakes, you have to move forward. To be the victim and to be in that mentality is such a comfy place to be. But comfort has nothing to do with success. Being physically fit has nothing to do with comfort. It has everything to do with discipline, grit, and get on with a goal. If you achieve it, you haven't set it high enough. Keep changing that goal level, keep raising that bar of excellence because your kids are always watching. And that resonated with me with my parents because they were always watching me. And I thought, why are they so involved with my life? I can do whatever I want until you come to the river and realize because they love and care for you. That's why.
That's right.
And it's a level of maturity and complexity that you can only reach at a time when you're ready. Some people are never ready. And I was ready at that time to take on the world, to be an adult and a participant, to make and evoke change. And that I would say is that out of the nest beginning for me.
So a couple of questions on that, Ed. Thank you. So my first question is going back to, and people often elude this, is where were you hatched? Where did you start life?
Well, I think I was conceived in a pool because we've always been around pools. So I'd have to say that's a very good answer, Warren, that I would have to say.
That was conception. Wait, were you born in a pool? If you were, that's very
And I'm
impressive.
an Aquarius, so I'm a bearer anyway. So I'm always around pools and I'm always around water. So I'd have to say that. Yeah, that's a good answer.
Were you were you actually born were you in Toronto area?
Yes, I was.
That I
Yes, I
do not
was.
know. So Conception Pool, right, border Toronto. Okay.
So,
Um,
if I can interrupt, I was born in Scarborough. I grew up part of my life at Jane and Finch in Toronto, which is a notoriously difficult community
hmm,
that has had its challenges. And then we moved as a family to another part of Toronto called Etobicoke.
right.
But our business has always remained in the Jane and Finch corridor in a tougher area, but it is really a wonderful part of Toronto that is the highest employment corridor in North America is where our business is located.
Really?
Mhm.
Is there, I know that, originally, reading your book and looking for the properties you were looking for and, finding the one you wanted. And, but then again, people, right? It's all in here. But, was that very strategic and being in that area? Because it was tougher, it was more challenging. Was there a little more meaning in behind that?
Well, the area itself is the highest employment corridor that's easier for people to get to because it's designed for people to work in.
Right.
So that's the first thing. Access to suppliers and contractors, they're all in the same neighborhood. So there's a scales of efficiency and logic that you don't want to be an island out in the countryside when all your suppliers and whatnot are nearby. And how
Right.
do you get employees to your office? They can't all drive. That's just a reality.
Mhm.
So I think it was strategic in that the placement of the office geographically within the GTA of Toronto is quite important. I wanted a Toronto address. It was important for me to serve the people of Toronto that I had a Toronto address because not only do I take from the city of Toronto people, but I also return to the people
Mhm.
through community services that we do. And I think that's quite important that you have that relationship of give and take within your community.
And we'll get to that when we're talking about bettering the pond for sure. I want to unpackage that a
Okay.
little bit more. So the next question I have for you, though, just from this conversation, is when you said you had a bit of the poor me, there's a little bit of victim mentality. Was there a defining moment that made you shift your thinking one day, or was it over time?
I think everything is gradual because you're building the pyramids or you're building a swimming pool or you're building a home. You have to start with that foundation. My foundation of a good solid Catholic upbringing and school and my church, I think, was that foundation for me. My family and the strength of my family was that foundation. So, quite frankly, it was a lot easier for me to start in life because my foundation was solid. I
Yeah.
think often when people have a very rough upbringing, they have much more adversity than I had.
Mhm.
But I had really a great family and reliance on church and family and school and support group and friends that really helped. But I would say the defining moment with regard to all of this adversity that we were talking about earlier and to sort of turning the switch to success was maybe to some degree it was just the way it was supposed to be.
Mm.
And some cases that innate spirit of success is just the way it is supposed to line up in the world. Uh, I think it is a combination of that, probably a bit of luck, because that is part of reality.
Mm.
And I think the encouragement of the people around me, because I was encouraging them, this contagious spirit of I can, I will.
Mm.
I think the contagious spirit of we can together do this. And I think that was probably, as I say, it's an accumulative grouping of things and items and people that pinnacled to the direction of, all right, arrows are in the same direction. Let's start going. Let's start marching forward.
I think that sounds a lot just like the V formation.
Not bad, eh?
That
Absolutely.
was almost scripted, Ed. I'm kidding. No, that's interesting. And I just want to add on to this before I move to the next question. But one of the things that I've found really fascinating about you and getting to know you is when I listen to you talk, very rarely do you say I. You say a lot of we. And it's just interesting in your language. You talk so much about we, us, family. Everything is about a bigger perspective than just you. So it's interesting to listen to.
Well, it's important because it's true. There is no I. Individualism sounds great and I think has its place. But in reality, the community and the culture that you create and are part of, if you're not giving credit for your team and the people around you effectively, and they participate in your vision, you have to participate in their vision.
Mhm.
And once you're participating in each other's vision of success, Warren, it's always we, because we always make it be. We always do.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I get sometimes I just get enamored listening to you. So, I have two questions for you. No, and so, as I said earlier, I said, you're probably one of the most authentic people I've ever met. Like you just are,
Thank you.
and it just shines through. Um, so two quick questions. I want to move on, but when you look back at mom and dad, so it's interesting. You're the youngest of seven.
Yes.
I am the youngest of seven. There's 14 years between myself and my oldest sister. You have 14 years between you. This is so fascinating. But looking back, um, with your dad, what do you think the number one lesson that you learned from your dad was? The number one
Be,
lesson.
be kind.
Be kind.
Being kind gets you more in life than anything. And being kind, believing in yourself, believing in God, and believing in what others may not believe in, going against the grain. Often that will get you to places that you never dreamed of.
I love it. Now, what about your mom? What's the number one lesson do you think that you learned from your mom?
Love. My mom was an amazing person who loved her family, and she just exuded love in everything that she did. She would make dinner for us, clean all the clothes, look after 7 kids, look after my dad, who was always working, and she did it with love.
Hmm.
That is amazing.
Mhm.
When you look at today's selfish, me attitude,
Mhm.
and what's in it for me. And I look at my mom, brings tears to my eyes thinking about it. She did everything with love.
Hmm.
And that example to me is amazing. My daughter, Kaylee, who you've met, reminds me so much of my mom
Hmm.
because she does everything with love. It's just so amazing to see.
Hmm. And that also does shine through. I mean, Kaylee is pretty amazing. And I mean she is wise beyond her years.
Yeah, both Kaylee and Connor,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
both kids are adults,
yeah,
are incredible. They
yeah.
really are.
I would agree. I can vouch for that. So,
And Colleen, my wife Colleen has the majority to do with that. She's unbelievable mom. She's been a great wife, partner, and mom to our kids. She's really done an amazing job. I have to do a shout out to Colleen.
we do have to do a shout out to Colleen for sure, right? We don't want to forget about Colleen. Definitely, we do not want to forget about Colleen. Oh, amazing. So, moving on, what do you think is the number one thing that can be positive or negative that's happened to you in your life that has ruffled your feathers? And how did you respond to it?
Well, there's so many positive and negative things that have changed my life, but I would like to gravitate to the positive. I had an opportunity to work for a Canadian billionaire in St. Kitts in the Caribbean. And we put together a bid to build a pool in and complex. It was a Marriott complex in the Caribbean. That was a pivotal change in our organization. It took us from adolescence, I think, into adulthood.
Mm.
It changed the dynamic of a seasonal business to a year round business. That all happened in 2000. Contract signed. We were excited we'd have winter year round work. We were really pushing to change us to a year round business for our employees' sake. So we had year round employees that could afford a home and afford because they had year round work versus seasonal. And then 9/11 happened. 9/11 changed travel,
Yeah.
the restrictions that were in place because of that. And we started this project right at 9/11. So we had signed it literally a week before that happened.
Oh, wow.
And then the world crashed. And we looked at it to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this has taken place. So there was a negative and a positive.
Mm.
However, positive always knocks out a negative. And it worked out to be one of the best projects that we've ever done. It was a very exciting project for our team, and it changed the maturity level of our organization and financially forever.
So, in that, that is so fascinating. And again, guess what? That is also in the book. Um, but how did you, and this is going to sort of lead into the next question, but in a time that was, I mean, the world. I mean, I like, and there's not very many people cannot remember where they were standing when they,
Yep.
I still remember the moment. Um, so, I mean, all of a sudden the world changed and you had an opportunity that was, I mean, changed the direction of the trajectory of the company. Um, in that scenario, how did you manage to keep it all together, to keep everyone focused on the same purpose and the same dream? And it's going to lead into the next question of flying in the V formation, but what did you do?
Because your mission, your values, and your goals stay the same. They do have a trajectory change as you maneuver through life, but the goals remain the same. Corporate success, individual success, happiness, all of these things stayed the same. So it was keeping the old adage of keeping your eye on the ball. And we didn't take the eye off the ball because of that distraction. I know it was people's lives, and I don't mean that in a callous way, because people died, and we have to remember what had taken place in 9/11 was so tragic. But through that, we had to look at how do we get through to the other side and remain. As Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, just keep going because you'll get to the other side. And I think that's part of life. When I started in 80, we had the recession of 81, a recession in 91 that went to 93. We had that Y2K, 2008, and 9/11, and all of the other ones in between. We had 10 years of government that couldn't spend money fast enough. We're going through tariff issues. That's life. That's life. Do you bury your head in the sand because one of those things happened? Of course not. Even in our tech group, they talk about, oh, the tariffs and Trump and this and that. I was the only one that said, I think it's the most greatest opportunity that there could be. Fiberglass pools are made in the States and they have a 25% tariff on it. Happy days are here at last. And you have to look at it that way. The thing about adversity is, how do you look at it and how do you manage it? When we look at this new phenomenon in Canada and our federal government in its inept ways, as an example, saying, you should buy Canadian now. Buy now Canadian? Hello? Why would you not choose Canadian first in the first place? And our pools are 90% Canadian. 90%. That's labor and materials. The other 10% are components of mechanical components that we cannot make ourselves that are from the US.
Right.
But our pool is 98% other than transistors and small components electronically that is North American made. Not many people can say that about our product. So when you look at adversity, how can I look at it in a positive way? Keeping your goals in mind constantly. And that distraction, that obstruction, that road bump, that whatever in the way, either go through it or go around it.
So I know, and I love that. The lens that you see the world through. When you're in your tech group and everybody's, oh, tariffs this and tariff that, and we're all hearing it. But he said I was the only person in the room who said, "What an opportunity!" Did the room kind of look at you and like, sort of, with a big question mark?
Yes, and I think that the tariff threat is real. Make sure that I'm very clear on that. This is nothing of a joke. It's real, and people's businesses can be affected in a very profound way, and some are going to close.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and the strong will get through,
Mm-hmm.
and the weak will not. It's similar to COVID. How did a group of restaurants do amazing, yet others went right out of
Right.
business? How did some businesses do amazing and others went out of business? I'm talking in the same category is what I'm
Sure.
referring to.
Absolutely.
Lady luck, yeah. Positioning, yes, et cetera, et cetera. There's all kinds of things. But take your hat off, they made it through.
Mm-hmm.
And you must look at these adversities pragmatically, but also with a positive lens to say, God put this in front of me as a challenge that I have to get through. I have to teach my children, my team, that we can get through this. When COVID happened, COVID was a pretty crazy time, especially in the world that we live in politically. And we were told, close your business, shut everything down, everyone go home,
Mm-hmm.
or everyone's going to die.
Yeah.
So I looked at that to say, okay, we're going to keep our business open. Everyone will keep working. Everyone will come to work. And we are going to get through this and be stronger and better than ever. I met with our team. Everyone will get a raise. No one will get laid off. We'll be the strongest we've ever been in history. Now we know our mission. Let's get on with it. That's exactly what we did. Not one employee suffered. Every employee made more money than they ever have.
Mm.
Our customers were delighted because we were there to serve them. It's selfish for us to go home and not serve them. We had to serve our customers. They had pools and families and they were staying home. Is it right for us to stay home? No. We're an essential service that had to look after those people. And our employees had a mission to look after our clients and, most importantly, each other. And that putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first and looking after our team gave them the power and confidence to look after our customers. And we got through that. Yet there are others that didn't.
Right. That is just a story in and of itself. And I was
Yep,
listening to, right? It's just that it's, I always say energy always finds a home. And the energy that you put in, right, went down to your people. Your people took care of one another. They took care of their families, which took care of their customers, and their customers took care of you. And it
yep.
just cycled, right? And you didn't let other things get in the way. So through the adversity, what I hear was through that you got better, right? No pressure, no diamonds, steel sharpens steel,
And you are what you manifest.
right?
It goes back to the
Hmm.
meeting that you're talking about. If you manifest negativity
Hmm.
and despair and destruction, I'll pretty well guarantee you'll see it for real. But if you manifest success and happiness and kindness and doing the right thing, it'll happen. It really will. I'm a test to that.
Yeah. I see it over and over, right? So when I was say, and it's an old adage, but where intention goes, energy flows, and it's a comment, but I truly believe it, and I've also had those experiences as well. So, but I've seen it in Gibson. Like it's just
Thank
you
you.
can just see it just flows through, right? And that authenticity is the piece that there's really when I talk about businesses, is going faster is not about going faster. Going faster is about getting rid of resistance. And that is very clear in Gibson.
Thank you.
So, as you know, Ed, God, I could really talk to you all day. But as you know, and we did some work together, and hopefully we'll be doing more. Is that geese fly with 71% more efficiency when flying the V formation than flying alone? Um, what do you think the secret is to getting a team? And you've already kind of led into this, but what's the secret to getting a team flying in that V formation?
When you talk about geese, and I'll use that quickly because you have that analogy so perfectly put. The leader is only temporary because they keep cycling.
Mhm.
The moral of the story in nature has to be brought forth better in humans. Leaders creating leaders. Leaders don't have a bunch of followers. Leaders creating leaders. So our organization is so dynamic because our philosophy is better at getting better and leaders creating leaders. And when you have one, like myself, move out of the way, Peter and his team. Peter moves out of the way, Kaylee and Connor. They move out of the way, Lucas and Sean and the rest of the team keep moving forward. It's about leaders creating leaders. And that's what it's all about to me.
I uh I love it, and some of the conversations I've been having recently, as a the number one, the power of leadership. And it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't have to be the CEO, right? I always say that, job titles are the enemy. It's about people. But it's knowing when to get out of the way,
Yeah.
right? It's knowing when to get out of the way. And, if I work with any organization, my goal is I want the leader to lead from behind, right? Come up, hey, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, inspiring, motivating, and getting people all, get the energy there, and then get out of the way.
Well, the leadership is organic because it continues to grow and blossom, provided you are nurturing that development. You have to nurture it. And you talked about you coming in and visiting with our team and training us and giving us a really good insight into who we are and how we behave in the world and how we can react or act on information. But when we look at each other, we say, how can we become stronger and better? Through education, through discipline, through constant improvement, through keeping an open mind to the world that is ever changing. And looking at that dynamically, looking at it powerfully of how can I weaponize this with my team and have them train the trainer, continue the blossoming, because it's not, as Simon Sinek said so greatly, the world is infinite, not finite.
Yeah.
Do you have finite thinking or infinite thinking?
Mhm.
And infinite thinking is what organizations need to move forward in a dynamic way. And I keep using the word dynamic because it's the most strengthening word that I know of that is powerful in organizations. It's organic, it's real, it's not artificial. It has to be real, and it comes from within. Tony Robbins talked about power from within, unleash the power from within. He had several of those uh, training sessions that he had around the world. And it's so important to, when you look at that, boy, that has a lot of meaning because everything you know inside your heart, most of the information you already know, it's unleashing that power. If someone has to lose weight or quit smoking or wants to do a marathon or build a second home or fly around the world, you can. Dreams don't come true, plans come true. And I think that is the definition of success, is making sure that your plans come true. So when you're hit with adversity, Warren, you don't have any money and your alternator goes in your car and you need to that car to get to work, you will find the money to get that alternator replaced. Why is it then when we know other things in life, until we're smacked in the face, it's mañana. I'll get to it tomorrow. I'll get to it tomorrow. It's not that big of a deal until you're really hit. When the doctor tells you something negative, then it's like, oh, there's my motivation. I guess I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. You have to train yourself and train your people to look at adversity through the lens of opportunity. That, I believe, will change your organization's method of problem solving, how you manage conflict, to what end. Look at that very carefully. Some people look at problem solving as, oh, just give them what they want and tell them to shut up. It's okay. It's over. That didn't solve the problem. And that is why we looked at ISO as a way of how do we talked earlier about raising the bar. How do you improve your organization? How do you improve your people? How do you create leaders? By having systems in place within your organization that constantly challenge you to be better. That's why we have 4 levels of ISO. That's why we have professionals like yourself come in and consult with our team. That's challenging status quo because it's really comfy, which we talked about at the beginning. Comfort is a nice place to be, but gets you absolutely nowhere. And when you look, as you talked a little bit ago about how do you get out of the way, it's looking at that runway that you have, realigning where you want to go, and making sure you always have a destination and another destination and another, because we live in an infinite world.
What is the golden pond? So I love it. I love it. And I just sort of recap that and listening to you is what popped in my mind is, living a proactive life rather than a reactive one. So that's what went through my head, and you captured it so eloquently. So to
Thank
be
you.
a good steward of time, Mr. Gibbs, one thing that was really inspired by you and all of Gibson. It's like it's not just you and I, and that's very palpable. What are all the things that you're doing to better the pond? So what is Gibson doing to make the world a better place? And I know the list is long. So
Well, the first and foremost is capturing our history and having it documented within our organization, making sure that history is a way of rhyming in the world, adversity and positive things, but making sure that the people that are working there now and after us know that they didn't blaze the road. The trail was blazed well before them, and to give homage to the people that blazed that trail. That humbles people in their position to move forward. Often in the society that we talked about earlier, the me society, I did it, I did it, I did it, I did it. No, you didn't do it. Everything that has been done before, probably a lot better. You just are part of what's right now. So looking at it to say, if I look at the past and I'm humbled by what has taken before me, how can I use that knowledge and that base to move it forward? Well, you move it forward by educating your team ongoing, making sure that you're paying it forward, hand up, not hand out, making sure you're always looking at your team of how can I improve my team? How can our team move forward? And the best way is through education, kindness, loving each other, looking after each other. And that is an ongoing, that is something that someone asked me about culture. When you finally reached a good culture within your organization, were you happy? And I said, there's no such thing. Culture is an atmosphere of trust. It's an atmosphere of caring and loving for each other's vision. It's a place that you can be that's safe. That's what a good culture is within an organization. And it's something that continually needs nourishment. And that nourishment is humans. That nourishment is adversity. That nourishment is positive, wonderful things that happen within each other's family, like births and other wonderful miracles in life that take place. That's what it's about to me.
one of the things that has sort of, I won't say bothered me, but I've been questioning for quite a few years, and it's something that I could never quite get my head wrapped around. And you just captured it. Is there was this idea, is that having love in business was almost like counterintuitive, or it was like a no-no. You can't put love and business together. And I never could figure out, like, well, since we spend the majority of our time with the people that we work with, often more than the people we're at home with, why is it so difficult to say, you know what? Well, yeah, we love and care for each other.
Because, Warren, it puts you vulnerable. And vulnerability is a risk. The vulnerability and the risk that's involved makes people afraid. And they're afraid to open up. And I believe that is because the environment is not safe enough for them to let it out.
So if people understood that your vulnerability is your strength, would that change the narrative?
I think it can. I believe you need a whole host of other ingredients for that to come together. As we
Mhm.
talked about, good culture isn't giving 4 days off. Good culture isn't giving a raise. Good culture isn't taking people on a picnic. That's not good culture. That's a gift. That's nice.
Mhm.
It's a mentality, it's a way of living. it's something that is an intangible that's so tangible.
Hmm.
Because you can't grab it. It's not something. I don't even believe you can teach it.
Mm.
You have to be able to embody it and want it innately. When someone is hired at our organization, we say that they're either oil or water. Either they're going to make it or they're not going to make it.
Hmm.
And we know that usually, that team knows that usually within the first hour.
Hmm.
You can have that sense of people if they're really on team for individual success or team success. The team is so important. I think the world that we've come in with multinationals, that it's primacy theory of only the shareholders should make money. And that's the only thing that's important. Only the top management and the CEOs make all the money. This hoarding of the success, this hoarding of all of the money, this negativity is what breeds what we live in today.
Hmm.
And we're not a multinational, obviously, but multinationals can have that level of culture. I think Facebook had a great deal of that in Google, the way they structured the organization with gyms and flexibilities and all kinds of other things that they did for their staff. And even though those are multinational organizations, I think they did really well by their employees, where a juxtaposition of that would be Amazon, that are really poorly paid employees for the most part. And that dynamic within those two organizations is very different, even though they're multinationals. So if you bring that down to a micro of a small companies like small or medium-sized businesses, you have to look after your people with genuine respect and care, creating an environment of high level of trust, creating an environment that you really have their vision in mind and will work towards their vision, then it allows them to work towards your vision. I think that symbiotic balance is really what's needed.
I just want to add on to that just a little bit because it was one of the things I found fascinating about, walking into your office, right? Number one, you've got messages and slogans all pasted absolutely everywhere. So the message is always there and and the interesting thing is everything is intentional. That's what I loved about it. Everything was intentional. It wasn't haphazard. People have their vision boards in their office. How do I help you get to your vision? And it doesn't matter who it was. How do I help you? And one of the things that I found so interesting was just, let's give Leslie a shout out because Leslie is just amazing, right? He is. He's amazing. I watch his face. I look at Leslie on Facebook. I'm like, oh, the guy is just rage with positivity. But, I have a chef, right, in the kitchen of your business, which is the hub,
Yeah,
right?
heartbeat.
It's a heartbeat. It's the breaking bread. It's the camaraderie around the table, right? And you just look at something such a simple thing of like just eating together, but how that just completely blossoms out. The ripple that is a natural ripple effect which
I,
comes out.
and I really believe that every organization should look really deep inside them to see what they can do for their team that gives a high level of impact financially, morally, that can change people's lives that you should be doing. I believe feeding our team, providing food for our team, high quality, good quality food, is something that I should be doing. I'm not doing it because I'm nice. I'm doing it because we
Mm.
should be doing that. It's about intentional representation of your brand, of your family, of your team. When we talk success and we talk trust and we talk about looking integrity as an example, you have to live it. An organization should be doing that. And we do that because it is something that is just I see it as an automatic. It's something that you should be doing. If our team doesn't have to pay for lunches and snacks and coffee and sometimes dinner because they can focus on the customer and their success, individually success, group success, and customer, it's a no-brainer.
Hmm.
It's a no-brainer. We should be, it's responsible for us to do that.
Hmm.
Other way of looking at it is you're babying your people and or enabling them. But I disagree with that because I've analyzed it from top to bottom. When you break bread, no one in this country should fear lack of food. Nobody. Food is so essential to our life. It should be responsible companies that say, let me take that burden off of you for your lunch, just one meal a day, or a few snacks, and maybe it's breakfast, whatever, so that you can focus in on our collective success and making our customer happy. That's a real important, powerful thing in my estimation.
Wow. You continually stop me in my tracks. And so no, I love it. It is such a, it is such an interesting way of viewing it. And again, listening to you in this podcast, but you always bring it back to, how am I responsible? When I look at responsibility, when I say responsible, I look at it as response able. I'm able to respond. And but I'm responsible for my people. My people are responsible to our customer, right? And our customers feel taken care of and loved and cared for, just like it's happening in the culture in the organization. And
Yep.
that comes back to everything I listen to. It just becomes so circular. And one of the things that I find interesting of organizations that really get this is they don't talk about their brand. They just be it.
Yeah.
Just don't talk about your brand. Be your brand. And when you can be it, that to me just goes back to that again, that whole authenticity piece. This is we just are, right? And that again is getting rid of resistance. So I just want to add a couple of things. I don't to be a good steward of time here, Ed. I do, I respect your time. I just want to just a little bit of shout out on talking about bettering the pond. So again, just want to just what give also Gibson, taking care of your people, taking care of customers. That's all like unbelievably high level. But also look at the the Princess Margaret Home Lottery, which you're doing. You're doing work with. You're doing work with the David Foster Foundation. You're doing work with the Andrea Bocelli Foundation. You're doing work with the hospital fund. Hospital fundraising, Food to Fight. You're doing all these other aspects from Gibson into the community, and you alluded to that to earlier. So I just want to, let people know when we talk about bettering the pond, of not, you're doing with your people, but your people are now taking that out and throwing it way into the community. And again, that is the, you're popping in the pebble, and the ripples just keep going out.
Sorry, there's some construction going on, and it's where I am, and so there's a little bit of noise in the background. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
hear it.
When you look, the world that we live in, when you look at the philanthropic endeavors that we do and others, we've had to do this because of the inept governments that we've had that should be funding these things.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be us funding, it should be government that are funding these things because what you had talked about are really important. Cancer research, I'm sure we can figure that out by now, but these type of things that we have are not being covered effectively by government. So we have to be responsible within our community to add value where we can to the most important, which we feel align with our organization. So when you say David Foster, which is life-saving organ transplant for children, that is something that our team can recognize that they participate in helping save lives. That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
That's something amazing. And each one of our endeavors is about human. It's about the human interaction and the importance of looking after your fellow human. Again, I'm not talking about enabling. I'm not talking about handouts.
Mhm.
I'm talking about a hand up where you can participate and you should participate in your community building. The end of the day, the community building that we have from any kind of tensions that you have could be racial, it could be socioeconomic, it could be a host of other things. If you can help and do a little bit of good, and a whole bunch of people do a little bit of good, we'd have such a better place to live. And I think that is the catalyst within our organization, that we're the little company that could, that I talked at the very beginning. You also are just one out of 8 billion people. What the hell can you do in the world? The reality is a lot. The world only changes as you change yourself first. And that within our organization is we changed first. And that makes a difference in our micro, in our little ecosystem. It makes a difference. And that we are so super proud of, that our team can do that.
Well, I think, Ed, from that, that just becomes the grand finale. I think that you we that I think we just had that. I think we just had the fireworks show, and we just saw the grand finale right there.
Okay.
So, so I have one more question for you, Ed, and then we'll do our wrap up. Is if you were standing on top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
Be kind to each other. Through kindness, all good things will come.
Thank you. And I was going to wrap this up by saying, when I look at your just your comment there, everything you've said, and I think I look at, the lessons you learned from your dad about being kind, the lessons you learned from your mom about loving. And then when you put that all together, I mean, and you've taken that and you've dropped it right into Gibson, right? And right into a Canadian-based company in Toronto, and actually you're creating a ripple effect around the world. And for that, Ed, I thank you.
Well, I thank you. What a wonderful opportunity to serve. I really appreciate it. Thank you for highlighting us and our team. We do
Oh,
have a great team, and it's pretty awesome to be part of this journey.
yeah, I'm honored just to get that little snippet that I get to play in it. So that's just like that's just joy for me. So again, there's Ed's book again. So Ed Gibbs, right? H2O, and I highly suggest give it a read. And I can't wait for the next one to come out because that's gonna be super
Not
exciting as
far
well.
away.
Excellent. I love it. All right. So again, just one last thing, Ed, is, thank you for your time today. Thank you for everything you're doing to better the pond. Thank you for the love and the caring and the kindness that you're putting out to every single person that you interact with. If people want to find you, have a conversation with you, find out about Gibson, find out more about your book, where do they go?
Gibsanpools.com, Gibsan pools, Pools.com, and or email ed@gsplc.ca, or you can call 416-749-4361. We would appreciate any feedback. It would be wonderful to speak to someone.
We will get that in the show notes so that they can. So,
There you go.
so there you have it, folks. I think this is going to be like the highlight podcast of 2025. I said that out of the gate, and I believe that to be true. And we had a great time with Ed Gibbs. And this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond because we're better together. Thank you so much, Ed.
Thank you very much, Warren. Have a wonderful day.
You too.